Hey, this is Kale the Quick with Easter Egg Productions, and this is Sounding Board. I'm here today with Caldwin,
Hi.
Surrealism,
Yo.
and Darren Drader, who's joining us for the first time. He's new here at Easter Egg Productions. How you doing, Darren?
I am a captive professional.
Exactly. We finally caught one, guys.
About time.
Yeah, well, I've heard legends, stories, actually, that you know what you're doing.
That might be a slight exaggeration.
But yeah, so you've actually done professional work in this capacity before. For anybody at home, Easter Egg Productions, it's more of a group of friends coming together, trying to make the things that they love, kind of like advanced fan works. But Darren, you've worked in the industry for quite a few years. What kinds of stuff have you done?
Okay, well, let's see. Why don't we start back in the prehistoric days, right around the year 2000, when I thought it'd be a fun idea to start up a tabletop role-playing game company.
Yeah.
That didn't really go anywhere. We produced a few PDFs, which you can still find on the internet if you're really good at your pirate sleuthing. But that actually led to me making a number of connections within Wizards of the Coast. I did some freelancing for them. I worked in the Wizards of the Coast offices for 4 years.
Oh, cool.
Then I worked for a video game company called 38 Studios, which was based in Providence, Rhode Island. It was owned by Kurt Schilling, who was an ass, and that went belly up. So since then, I've also written some novels, and I think my tabletop gaming credits are number over 60 at this point.
Nice.
Last time I checked. I don't know. So yeah, that's me.
So of your tabletop credits, because obviously we do a lot of tabletop gaming.
Mm-hmm.
What would you say were kind of the most fun or the most interesting tabletop things to work on? And what specifically do you mean by tabletop? Like wargaming, the smaller RPGs, or what?
Oh, we are definitely talking about Dungeons and Dragons.
Oh, okay.
So I would say that my most notable one was probably co-authoring Book of Exalted Deeds. That was also my first one with Wizards of the Coast, and it kind of blew up. A lot of people are familiar with that one. The 3rd edition version. I know they did one for 4th edition, which I know nothing about. So, like I said, I would say that that's the most noteworthy thing that I can think of. But then I've also done work on Forgotten Realms. There was Bastion Press, which did an entire line of campaign setting stuff called Oathbound. I was involved in all of that. Recently, I've done some Star Trek, and I've also come up with a couple of settings of my own, which I've put out there.
Well, so you've been around, made a lot of things, made a lot of connections.
Yeah.
Just pretty much done everything, it sounds like. Well, everything except for film, so I think was on that resume, I heard.
Film? No film.
Ah. So let's see. So has anybody seen any new media that they've taken or seen lately? Any new shows, read any new books? Let's see. Caldwin, have you read or seen anything lately?
Drawing a blank, actually. Come back to me.
All right,
I know I've seen stuff.
I saw so much, it's all blurring together. What about you, Surrealism?
Let's see. Well, I've been doing a tour of old Star Wars games, actually.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Back in the glory days of LucasArts?
Yeah, well, I mean, you can call it that. They definitely had a few hits to go with all their misses.
We'll call it that. And I will continue the quote and say, before the dark times, before the Empire.
Yeah, all right. So,
Disney?
Yes.
I guess they kind of are an empire, huh?
Yes, they are.
Disney, when they shut it down, they gave Electronic Arts an exclusive license to make video games, which is why there have been so few Star Wars games since that happened.
All right.
Just Battlefront, right?
Pretty much, yeah. That's the only big one. I think that and a smattering of mobile games, which have been.
Yeah, those don't count.
Electronic Arts hasn't actually made anything worth playing in. I'm drawing a blank here.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to
arguably two of the Mass Effects.
But I do have to say this about Battlefront. It is a very pretty game.
Definitely. Like, so I've been working in game design. I'm actually doing the Ludum Dare or Dare right now at the University of Idaho, and like it's technically impressive and it's also aesthetically impressive. Like just what they can do with the computer, and then like what the artists have actually put together. Battlefront was a very pretty game.
Yeah, and it was there's a good hour and a half of gameplay in there. Yeah, I mean, if it costs $1, then it would have been a great design. But for a full game, it's kind of just sad.
Yeah, that's what I've heard. That it was really lacking in that they rushed it out because the seventh Star Wars movie was coming out, so they really wanted to ride that hype train. Which, from a business standpoint, understandable. But again, we're consumers.
They turned it into a movie tie-in, thus making it shovelware.
Yeah, and we're consumers ourselves,
and
and
the good kind.
we don't want to be overly concerned with the entire business idea of things. I just want good games. And
so now rather than developing it, they're doing Battlefront 2, which, you know, the strange thing about Star Wars Battlefront 2 is that
it was already released a long time ago.
It's actually
$150 on Steam.
Watch it sitting on my desktop right now. What's up with that?
Well, a long time ago.
In a galaxy far away.
Pretty much. Actually, the old Battlefront games were really, really good. I mean, I remember Battlefield 1942. I literally have a copy of it in arm's reach, like the old CD, and then the Star Wars mod for that. And then, of course, they're like, "Oh, people want this, so let's make the game." And the Battlefront games are really solid. I remember playing them with surrealism, like when they came out.
Yeah, desperately trying to use the aircraft and eventually giving up.
Yeah. It's like a missile. You just crash it into the ground.
Impossible to meaningfully affect the game. The vehicles, other than the AT-AT, were kind of a joke, but...
Yeah, but...
Okay, so it's decided, though, that Battlefront 2 is going to require some sort of networking through the TARDIS, though, to get it to work. Is that right?
I don't know. I'm not an expert on the TARDIS.
Wow.
Put it this way, it could run Crisis.
Oh, wow. Like the first one? That's pretty impressive.
Yeah, no. Yeah, I don't know anything actually about the spec requirements for Battlefront 2. Are they going absurd with it? Just trying to make it pretty?
I'm guessing it's probably like the last one. I'm not really expecting anything more in terms of spec requirements, but I think this is more of an iterative release that is designed to make more money.
Yeah, and I don't have a problem with that in and of itself. It's just when that's your only objective, you turn out crap.
So I've heard hints that there's going to be like a story campaign in this one, which was lacking from the new Battlefront 1.
And every shooter game released in the last 10 years.
Well, that could actually get me to invest in the stupid thing, because that's what was really missing in the first one.
The funny thing is that that's the exact same gimmick of the old Battlefront 2, was that it had a story mission where like you play as the 501st Legion throughout everything. So like they're just reusing everything like at a higher level than anticipated.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, that's Star Wars, obviously great. Surrealism. Have you been playing any of the other old classics? What you've been playing?
Let's see. I wouldn't call it a classic, but I've finally got around to trying Dragon's Dogma. And for those of you who don't know, it's pretty much your standard fantasy game where, a evil dragon is assaulting a kingdom, and for various reasons, you're stuck being the one to fight it. Actually, I'm like halfway through the game, and I still don't really know why I'm the one doing this, but. I climb on monsters, I stab them, I get followed around by random mooks that are called pawns and are actually canonically NPCs. Once in a while they help. Mostly they just distract monsters.
That's the game where some of the NPCs are designed by other people, right?
Yeah, so
like you design your own NPC and then they can also go help other people sometimes?
Yeah. You design one NPC, summon two others, and you don't control them. They just kind of try to help you and get stuck on level geometry.
Truly a classic.
Yeah, and you can pay people if you like their NPC a lot. There's not a lot of incentive to do so, but a lot of people, as a strategy for getting more money, just tried to make really sexy or, I guess, iconic characters. You know, like you have the person who has the 7-foot tall woman wearing lingerie with no combat ability as their companion.
Lovely.
Yeah. And then on the other hand, you have the person who like got all of the suboptimal paladin looking gear and stacked it onto one character and then gave them a weapon that glows with holy white light.
All right.
So really going for kind of themes there to just be cool for the cool
Those
factor.
are the ones that get summoned because since the NPCs aren't that helpful, you just kind of make an attractive entourage for yourself.
That's interesting. And,
Yeah.
you know, there's nothing wrong with just another good fantasy RPG. I mean, there's nothing wrong with just another good RPG, right?
Other than that, the main gimmick is that if you've ever played Shadow of the Colossus, it's kind of like that where you can climb on sufficiently large enemies to fight them and like try to get to weak points to stab.
Okay.
Just with RPG mechanics.
But how's the music though?
I genuinely haven't noticed.
All right.
So not
Shadow
great.
of the Colossus is better then.
Yeah. Oh, although at one point, while I was running through a field outside of a city, there were a bunch of cows around me, and a griffin, which I realized halfway through was a boss monster, just flops out of the sky, picks up a cow, stays for long enough for me to see that it has 5 health bars, and flies away. And I'm just like, did that just, was I supposed to do something? I don't have a quest for a griffin. What?
Suddenly
You
a
didn't
griffin.
attack it? Why didn't you attack it?
I was paralyzed, just like figuratively.
5 health bars.
I'm just running through. There's 2 cows and a goblin on the screen, so I'm not worried about what's happening at all. And just bam, boss monster picks up cow, leaves.
It's not
By
my
the way,
fault.
how many health
Didn't
bars
even
do
start.
you have?
I only have 1.
Yeah. Okay. Just
But-
checking.
Yeah. No, the battle music didn't even start playing until after it was flying away.
I guess you
Taking your dinner with it.
spared you?
That was actually its victory music. It won and just left.
So yeah, good random setting details and interesting party mechanic that is, I think it failed in terms of gameplay, but works in terms of fun.
That was
Mhm.
good.
It didn't add to the game the way they thought it would, but it's kind of fun to play dress up with your random NPC.
So,
Nice.
speaking of what you might call minions, I started playing the game Overlord.
Finally.
Yeah. So I've never played that. What's entailed there? I mean, I know the general idea is that you have a cool suit of armor. I'm pretty sure.
You are a bulky as fuck. I can swear on this, right?
Yeah. No, I'm pretty sure.
Cool.
I don't fucking care.
A bulky as fuck evil overlord that is, I don't know, woken up out of a coffin or something. But you're not a vampire because you have too much in the muscle department for that.
And
Anyhow.
you go in the sunlight and don't drink blood.
Yeah, that too. So you are, and I should start this by saying I literally only started this and got past like the second mini mission, still kind of tutorial phase. But you're supposed to go out with your minions and ravage things, bring back parts of this decrepit tower that was ruined by heroes when they attacked your predecessor, whoever that was.
Dumb heroes.
So you get to control these little minion things, and I will admit it is very fun to just kind of step out of a portal into this nice little green outskirts of a village and sick the minions on sheep.
Yeah, sheep
Never
are your
has there
primary
been a
source of
greater
souls.
slaughter. Especially because the sheep respawn, so I can just go back to the tower and then pop back out in the village and do it all over again.
All right. Sheep
The
farming
minions
simulator.
are also, they're more helpful, I guess, than what it sounds like the ones in Dragon's Dogma do.
Yeah, but much
Mostly
less
because
pretty.
you can, when they die, you just have to be next to the fountain to resummon them again.
Ah.
Because they're stupid and they are literally just pack mentality of, okay, go get the thing. No, don't attack the random guy that was standing in the middle of all the.
Okay.
Ugh.
So it sounds like they're actually about as helpful as the Dragon's Dogma minions. There are just way more of them.
Yes. They win
Alright.
through sheer numbers. They are stupid, with the exception of the guy that's running you through the tutorial, who is the only smart minion. Period.
And it's the guy who...
Okay, so I got a question here.
Yeah?
Is there any relationship between Overlord and the really old Dungeon Keeper games?
Describe the Dungeon Keeper games.
They're called Dungeon Keeper.
Okay, fair enough.
you basically run a dungeon and you're trying to fortify yourself against the heroes coming in to wipe you out.
It sounds like there's a thematic connection, but in Overlord, you're actually wandering around taking action, not just minding your tower.
Fun fact,
Yeah.
Dungeon Keeper, EA game.
Really? Back when they were a real company?
The new one, Dungeon Keeper, the original one, I think was made by. That's one of the reasons Peter Molyneux was famous, and thus people kept going along with him for things like Fable, over and over
It
again.
was good the first time.
Yeah, it was. It wasn't as bad a fall as Shyamalan from Good Movie to just straight down the cliff.
Yeah.
So, Peter Molyneux, I'm gonna say he's like the game design Shyamalan.
Yeah. It just took way longer for him to channel on it,
Yeah,
which I'm going to start saying, by the way.
it's definitely a verb. I just added
I
it
won't
to a
stop
list of
you.
verbs. So, what about you, Darren? Have you been playing anything? I mean, you said you had like Battlefront there, but what else? Like anything new you've been doing? For
Well,
entertainment?
I wouldn't say that there's been anything new per se. I finally got around to beating Wasteland 2 Director's Cut a while ago. That was fun. After that, I started playing Pillars of Eternity.
Ooh, that's a good
awesome.
game.
That is a very fun game.
Have you got? Did you get the Cipher Woman yet?
The Cipher Woman.
Yeah.
Okay, so funny thing about NPCs is that I went to the tavern and I created my own people to accompany me on these quests.
Oh, you're not using the pre-generated NPCs?
And with the exception of, I think, like one guy who is nothing but cannon fodder, I'm just kind of sticking with the guys that I put together myself.
Oh, bummer, because yeah, you pick up a character that is the best example of the mysterious witch archetype.
I think I have encountered her, though. I'm pretty sure I've encountered her. I know who you're talking about.
All right, yeah. No, love her to death. She's just hella cryptic, incredibly unhelpful.
Well, that seems to be the problem with the NPCs in that game, is that they've got their own little quest lines, but other than that, they're not that helpful.
I don't know. I mean, I really liked the farm guy warrior because he's not the typical dumb fighter, and I love anything that breaks a cliche. Yeah, or exemplifies, in the case of the Cipher Woman, a trope that I don't see as often as I'd like to.
So, what is Pillars of Eternity? I've heard it mentioned, but I've never played it. I don't know a lot about it. What type of game is it? What are we talking about?
Okay, well, the easiest way to describe it is take Baldur's Gate, which I'm sure you're familiar with.
Nope.
You're not familiar with Baldur's Gate.
No.
Like, we're not even speaking the same language here.
Top-down RPG, D&D based.
Yes,
You
yes.
switched to like Spanish several minutes ago.
Si, senor.
Nine! Sprechen English!
So yeah, top-down RPG, very much like D&D. And then, and for a while, you couldn't really find like any of these on the market. You know, you had the Baldur's Gate games, and you had the Icewind Dale games, and then there was like nothing. So everything went to first-person 3D, you know, that sort of thing. And now people are getting back to this, you know, party-based. You know, I kind of enjoyed doing that. That was fun. It's just like playing tabletop. You know,
The indie game revolution really did a favor for the genre.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. And you mentioned Wasteland 2. What's the story there? What's that?
Well, if you take Fallout 1 and 2 and update the graphics, that's basically what Wasteland 2 is. Again, it's party-based, top-down RPG.
All right.
In the case of Wasteland 2, it's also turn-based.
Okay, so you said there was like a resurgence of these games recently, something like that, like their popularity came back. Another thing I remember like that was XCOM, the Enemy Within. I think the newest one, like was another old series that like came back, top-down, turn-based type of thing, and if I recall, they were trying to like bring it back as like a first-person shooter. Like you said, they were like everything was 3D now, so they're like, oh, let's just take this old title, dust it off, and slap some guns in it. And there was like huge backlash against that.
And the funny thing is, I think that's the only XCOM I've actually played, and not very much.
First-person shooter one.
I've never actually played the top-down RPG XCOM.
If you like strategy games at all, then you're missing out. They're pretty good, or the newer ones are. I've heard the older ones are kind of disappointing.
Mm-hmm.
Punishing is the word I've used heard for the old ones.
Okay, yeah, that's fair.
Which was gaming in the 90s. So
yeah, they wanted to get back at you for not playing sports or something.
Yeah.
How dare you not go out into the sunlight and enjoy life? Here, have another wave of alien respawns.
Oh my God, why? By the way, I just turned permadeath on. Why? You guys were staying dead. I don't like it. Well, so that sounds kind of interesting. If that's kind of a resurgent genre, why don't we come up with an idea for something like that? I mean,
all right,
we got the brain power here.
Unique new way to do a top-down RPG.
Well, I don't know. Like what you talked about was Dragon's Dogma earlier. We don't necessarily need to reinvent the wheel. We just need to figure out what makes a good one. Do you have any ideas, Darren?
Well, as a matter of fact, I came up with a setting about 10 years ago called Reign of Discordia, which is a science fiction space opera setting. The original idea was kind of, I wanted to sort of stick to the tropes of science fiction from the 1970s. So we're talking things like Battlestar Galactica, and just kind of in the look and feel of things. And over time, it's definitely evolved away from that a little bit. But I think that it would be kind of cool to use that setting as the basis of a game that would be kind of a combination of, say, Mass Effect and Baldur's Gate. So it's party-based, top-down, space opera, but well, you know, it still kind of harkens back to the simulating a tabletop as opposed to first-person shooter, you know, that type of stuff.
Oh God, that sounds terrible.
All right, so a lot of these space opera games take place almost entirely outside of spaceships with characters walking around. So anytime you're going to make one of these games, you need to come up with an excuse for the story not to be decided by interactions between fleets, you know?
Oh, absolutely.
You have to come up with a reason why these, I'm going to guess, 4 people wandering around planet side are the ones who make a difference in the war, which I assume there'll be a war. There always is in a space opera.
There has to be a war.
Without them all having godlike powers that surpass everybody else and would clearly decide the battle.
Yeah, this is
I hate that.
This is a video game, not an anime.
I can't stand.
Yes.
Yeah, no punching spaceships out of the sky. At least till the final chapter.
All right, crossing that off the list.
Or until you unlock your ultimate form. I don't know.
Where you
or
are
just turn on easy mode.
Yes, actually, that would be fun. If there was some kind of... Yes, I like that.
So
mostly for the shenanigans.
So obviously for like a big space opera, the setting is a huge component. So Darren, if you've already got one, you know, in the back, you could just pull out and dust off. That's great. Big IPs that are already made are great. Like I guess yours, and then the Tequila Star setting, and you know, other ones. You know, IPs are really valued. So why don't you give us like a 5-minute rundown of this
Reign of Discordia?
Setting. Yeah, Reign of Discordia.
All right. Well, the idea originally came from, you know, what would happen if there was the kind of the evil empire. They started out kind of benevolent enough, but over time kind of turned into self-serving thugs. You know, they would encounter other species and enslave them, and you know, you'll work in the mines for us because that's what we tell you got to do. That type of thing. So, you know, not really very nice to their neighbors that aren't as powerful. And then they try to beat up on this other race they run into called the Rotilic, who are a nomadic group of alien lizards, basically, and they get their butts kicked. And so this evil empire falls. Now, unlike, you know, say Star Wars: The Expanded Universe, there is no government that kind of jumps in and unifies things and like reforms things after this happens. Instead, it just turns into utter chaos. You've got worlds basically looking out for themselves. So, you know, you're going to have human space, and you're going to have space belonging to all these alien races, but they're not unified in any sense. You know, oftentimes they'll be at war with each other. They might be at war with another, you know, another group of aliens, you know, that sort of thing. So in the midst of this, at least at this point in the timeline, where things are at right now with the IP, and I specify that because I have some ideas. At this point in time, you know, the Rotilic, you know, they wiped out that evil government. They're still there, and they still want to they still want to pretty much get even. They want to wipe out every race that belonged to this thing.
It's like they were ready for a fight.
Resistance against them. So you know, they're like, you know, the humans and the other aliens that used to be part of this thing, they're kind of behind the 8 ball. And I think they're very much aware of that. And to make things worse, the Rotilic aren't exactly a constant threat. They kind of stay in the background quite a bit of the time, and then periodically pop out and wipe out a world and go back into hiding. So
you can't even use them to unify because they're not always there.
Yes.
Huh. It's cool. Kind of got a Shattered Empire thing going. And I guess, so it kind of makes me feel like a post-apocalyptic setting, not in a normal way we think of it, but just in, like, this is about how close you could get in terms of like a multi-planetary setting, like, you know, where there's still spaceships that go around. Like, there used to be this giant thing holding everything together, and it just completely fell apart. So you could add in a lot of like, you know, searching for resources, even though you can do all the normal space stuff. And
yeah. And so because of that, you know, there's still planetary governments. There's still order on the planetary level in many cases. So it's not like you're going to just like drop onto a planet and it'll be like Mad Max. You know, it's not like that at all.
Maybe on the old Imperial capital.
Yeah, definitely.
Which is, I'm assuming was bombed to hell and gone at some point.
There were 3 worlds that made up the core of the Imperium, and there was a biological agent released on all 3 of them. So there's basically nothing living there except for people who are dropping down in encounter suits, picking through the wreckage.
All
right. That sounds like a pretty good. I'm gonna say second world to visit.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, definitely.
You know, your first prologue world where you find your feet, and then you have to go find some MacGuffin that was on the Imperial capital world when it was destroyed.
The closest things that I played to what would be like this would be, well, of course, the Mass Effect series that you mentioned, and then also the Knights of the Old Republic series. And in both of those, you have your ship, and you run around slowly gathering your crew, and you can kind of choose where to go. But they set it up so that you have a reason that you have a ship and you're going around. So if we were going to make our own game, how would we set that up? Obviously, we got a good setting for gallivanting in general, but you know, how do we get our main character dude into the sky?
Well, you don't even need to have a ship. There are a lot of RPGs where you only gain freedom of movement towards the late, middle, beginning of the end period. If you think of the old Final Fantasy series, you're basically on train tracks up until you get the airship.
True.
So we'll say, like, your final mission on each planet is hitching a ride out of the planet.
Got to get out of here. This place is done. They're about to find me.
You accomplished your objective, your enemy arrived, something like that. You need to either buy a ticket off world or help a ship break the blockade, so they give you a ride to your next destination. And then at some point towards the end, we could give you your actual spaceship so you can revisit old locations and get all the treasure you could see but not access on your first run.
That would definitely be one way to do it. Another way to do it would be to just give them freedom of movement, give them a ship. One of the groups that is one of the more important groups in the setting, they're called the Guardians of Light. And what they do is they research basically old artifacts. They look for technology. They look for secrets. They're looking for anything they can find to fight the Rotilic. And in the process, they've kind of built up a bit of a military. But they're always looking for people, like in smaller ships, to go scouting locations and stuff like that. So another thing about this style of game is that say you're playing Baldur's Gate and you're gonna start out in a town, and then once you've done what you need to do there, or even as soon as you've reached the border of that area, you look at the world map and it'll open up a new location. So this could be structured in a similar way, in that we don't place limits on where somebody goes, other than the fact that you have to get there directly, if that makes sense. You have to reach the edge of the map, or you have to
you have to get to the starport,
or you have to get the the logbook that tells you how to get to this one system that whatever. Yeah. But if you kind of make it map based there, then the key is to make the quests kind of progress along with the map.
Right. Well, the advantage of railroading players is if you can predict what they're going to do, you can design encounters more linearly. If you're okay with players running into things they're not ready for and just kind of willing to trust that they'll eventually back off, then an open world concept can be a lot of fun, especially for experienced players who can then sequence break and do all kinds of crazy things.
Right. Of course, you can still kind of limit them a little bit with that by putting somebody in there that they have to fight that they're not ready for until they hit a certain point.
Yeah. If you can
and I've run into that with Pillars of Eternity, where I run into a map and I start talking to a guy and I'm trying to make friends with him. And at the end of this conversation, we have to kill you. And you fight him and there's no way you can win. And, that's eventually you get to a point where you can challenge them and you can move on with the story, but you have to do certain things before that happens. So, that's always one way of kind of confining them.
So we could restrict access to certain worlds, say by having a military blockade around the starport. Until you can fight or trick your way past them, you can't access that planet, even though you can actually go to the planet.
Absolutely.
All right, I like it. By the way, for a MacGuffin, what do you think of trying to track down the coordinates of the system where the Empire kept its storage of super weapons?
The legend of the vault.
Interesting, because, I told you that I had some ideas, right?
Yeah, you said it was a pretty much not fully fleshed out, but like complete story world, right?
Right. So that's the way that it exists like currently. But my idea was to advance the timeline. So, we'd be looking at, say, 10, 15 years past the point where the setting initially started. At that point in time, we could just kind of reference the Rotilic Wars as in the past and set something up, set something new up. That way, everything that has existed in the tabletop world, and I'm actually working with another author on doing some tie-in novels. All of that kind of exists in one sphere, and then the video games exist in another sphere. And just because what happens in one area, that doesn't make the other area less interesting. So the reason I mention that is because this MacGuffin that you've described is book 2.
All right, not my fault. I just see plot.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. No joke. We were watching some Liam Neeson movie like once a few years back. Like two lines into the movie, he just looks up from his phone and calls out the entire fucking plot. And I tried so hard to like not believe it. And I was sitting there next to him for the entire movie as every single thing he said in the first like 2 seconds happens.
Okay, so all that had happened was Liam Neeson walked up to a receptionist and he says, "I'm giving a seminar." And I just call the entire movie from there. I didn't believe I had it right.
Fucking everything. You're the seer of plot. You just fucking do this shit.
Okay. So if we're not doing a Retilic thing, then we need another enemy. So Caldwin, I'm putting you on the spot. Describe an enemy you enjoyed fighting in some game or enjoyed seeing the heroes fight in some story. Like, give me an idea.
Yeah, because you played the Mass Effect series, right, Caldwin?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or anything else. Like, what did you...
I'm trying to branch out because I know you guys are less fond of Mass Effect.
Yeah, well, we're very fond of Mass Effect 1.
That's the only one I've played, believe it or not.
Yeah.
You did good.
No,
yeah,
no,
so,
there's more to it.
I'll say this. The gameplay got better in 2 and 3, but the story got way worse.
I've heard that it goes very dark.
Yeah.
Well, it just gets crappy.
Let's say it's all right, guys. We're gonna make an awesome space.
Okay.
And it's gonna stay awesome until at least 4. Okay, just do one better than everybody else.
And then we just stop at 3.
This is a little difficult for me because most of the games I play don't really have outside of Mass Effect. There's not really one a boss that comes to mind because, like, Monaco. No, not really.
The
Well,
boss
I mean,
is
Although
Bob.
I suppose the Crypt of the Necrodancer, how each of the bosses has like plenty of games, different ways of beating different bosses. Like
Yeah, so
the
I'm
fact
not
that you have to
talking
strategize around that.
I'm talking about a story enemy here, though. You know, not
Yes,
just
I know, and that's why I'm telling you, I'm drawing a blank outside of Mass Effect.
All right.
So it also really doesn't help the fact that she's not familiar with Reign of Discordia.
Well, yeah, but when you're talking about
sci-fi.
space opera enemies, you can kind of make up whatever. I
Yeah.
mean, your basic 2 are mysterious race bent on the annihilation of everyone, which you've already done.
Yep.
Reavers.
Yeah, and horrible machines bent on the annihilation of everyone. Like, those are your standard space opera enemies.
You know, we haven't actually made sure that these reptilian people aren't robots.
Reptilian robots.
Yeah, they're
Right.
cold-blooded.
You know that if you look at the original Battlestar Galactica and you read the promotional material, they talk a lot about Cylons being reptilian, and yet you never actually see a reptilian Cylon. They're all machines.
That's hilarious.
You know how you make a robot reptilian?
Lasers.
No, make it solar powered.
All right, nice. I like it. So to pull back and like shift a little bit, we don't need to go all out and like massive galactic scale for the first time. We could, and I think an interesting story would be to just have your character is on a planet that was like hit really hard, and it has that kind of wasteland aesthetic, and your entire goal is just to find a way off the shitty rock.
Mm-hmm.
And like that could be the entire game. You could run around, meet whimsical characters, and get laser guns and all the cool shit, and then just get off that hellhole. And then that would be perfect, especially for a sequel. If we made one really good game that was just getting off that rock, and then that's where we lead into the next one, that would be really cool.
I don't know. I think that in this universe, it's a little too easy to get off the rock. But I think that'd make a good prelude into the larger game.
Yeah, and if you're doing, if this is indeed going to be a space opera, you don't necessarily need to do the fate of the entire universe, galaxy, whatever, although that is typical. But it needs to be a big conflict because this is a big setting.
True.
Like, the fate of one world might do it, as long as you had to travel to multiple worlds to save that one you were trying to save.
Well, what if that one world is it belongs to a race that's been problematic from the beginning, and it's already written into the end of the first story arc that world is going to get the shaft?
Are you trying to save the Retilic?
No.
Okay. Because I'm sick to death of endangered dragons and all similar creatures.
No. There's another race which is very similar. They look like humans. They're called the Lamagos. They have blue skin, black hair. They are very there's kind of some parallels between their culture and like the former Soviet Union. They like monuments. They like order.
Oh, that sounds awesome.
Cardassians got it.
Nice.
Yeah, kind of. Anyway, their planet orbits a blue star. Might be where the blue skin came from. Who knows? But their home planet orbits a blue star, and it is thought that wasn't even that planet's home star to begin with. It like started out as a rogue planet and ended up there because blue stars have kind of a short lifespan.
Yep.
The Reptilic will, at the end of the first series, the Reptilic will show up en masse to destroy their world. And of course, as a former Imperium ally, part of this, good part of that story is people unifying behind them to save them. And in doing so, they've got some super technology, which is going to trash the Reptilic fleet by drawing on the power of that star. The problem with that is that destabilizes an already unstable star, and their world is going to be destroyed.
So are you...
Neat.
So that sets up Series 2.
Hang on.
Which could be the premise for the video game.
So we could actually tie into a fantasy mainstay, young man comes of age and is sent on quests to save his home village, only replace village with planet. Like, you need to go track down the super technology that will stabilize the star, or the, black hole collapsinator that will create a new one.
That's certainly one possibility.
Though I will say that most video games are more fun with an enemy to fight rather than just a quest to accomplish. So, obviously we'd need opposition.
What if there are enemies, but you don't have one big enemy? Like, okay, so you need some kind of technology to save your planet.
Mm-hmm.
Either you have to get different materials or different parts to build this machine from different planets, or they are willing to share, I don't know, plans to make that kind of thing. So you have to say, oh, well, I need this from you, and nothing's for fucking free. Come on. So they have you help them with something else, which could involve conflicts with other worlds.
Now, see, I was actually going to come at this from a different perspective. I was going to come at this from the human perspective. And when this happens to the Lamagos, they actually militarize. They get more aggressive because they're already kind of an aggressive species who were friends with the humans, but that age has come and gone, So they were going to get more aggressive. It was going to turn into a political mess because you've got their religious nut job group called the Excentrists. And in the midst of all this, they're looking at pushing out and, finding a new home world and relocating their people or something of that nature. And then, in the middle of all this, the characters might come together and look for, in the face of great strife and conflict, look for a more peaceful solution to the problem.
Or that could be your decision. A lot of these top-down games, have paths. Usually the good and the evil path,
mm-hmm.
which may be more complex depending on how willing to put the
keep in mind
nothing
here is set in stone. So
yeah. You could have the option to go out and try to find an unoccupied homeworld, or a homeworld that is sufficiently devastated and depopulated that it could accommodate a large portion of the Lamago people. Though I'm not sure how you'd structure a game around that.
Yeah,
and then you can have
one thought that I've been kind of playing with is do something sort of like Stargate technology.
Ooh,
where
you have my attention.
You basically, and there is a race out there, a very old race who kind of runs around in these plant-based encounter suits. So they've got access to. They're not very helpful usually, but they've got access to advanced technology. But basically, suppose that you were to set up some, hook these things into black holes for power sources and suck this planet to a new home around a star that's stable. And that would be your ultimate solution.
Okay, and alternatively, you could use the same technology to just destroy the Lamago homeworld if you want to take the we can call it the evil ending or just the permanent ending. Either one.
Permanent ending.
Yeah, you could do that. And the cool thing is it wouldn't even trash the setting because in Lamagos, they own, plenty of real estate out there. It's just that's where their major population center is on that one planet.
Yeah, and it's the government that's the problem, not the species.
Right.
So if you're moving the planet, one, they're going to have to, whatever you do is going to have to end up being precise on coordinates, how/where to move it, or you'll end up with, I'm replaying this scene in my head from Doctor Who when, I want to say it was the Master was trying to bring through Gallifrey. But it was like over the Earth, so it was kind of crushing it. And so that I want to put it out there that if you screw it up, that should happen, and then both worlds should just kind of crumble.
Yeah. So on the note of science, because this is a space opera, not like harder sci-fi. So we don't want to go too deep into the science, but like, what are some of the technologies that makes this sci-fi its own? Because like everybody's got their own special FTL thing or special this or that other thing. So like, how do the ships get around from planet to planet in this galaxy? Do they use laser guns or what?
How does FTL work is what you're asking.
And all of the other cool sci-fi shit, yeah.
What's the gimmick of this, the tech gimmick of the setting?
Okay, the tech gimmick of the setting is, if you remember, it was about 10 years ago, and scientific theory has now disproven this entire thing, which kind of irritates me because I either have to go back to the drawing board or we just hand wave it away.
Yeah.
But there was the idea that tachyons moved faster than light. And so what you would do is basically your FTL drive would surround your ship in a tachyon field, and it would then jump to pretty much wherever you wanted to. And you could program, there were these spaceways already programmed into your system. So if you want to jump to a known location, that really wasn't a problem. But if you wanted to explore, you needed to move faster than light, and you had to go along a non-programmed route. And the way to do that was micro jumps. Micro jumps, basically, instead of jumping, hundreds of light years in one jump, instead you kind of you do a whole bunch of jumps to the point where it feels like you're moving through space at a faster than light speed.
All right, so this is more
like
along
Star Trek.
More along the lines of the Star Wars, where it's easy to move around along pre-charted lanes, but exploration is hard, as opposed to Star Trek, where you can go FTL all the time and your sensors work at FTL, so you can kind of just warp off in a direction and explore stuff.
Yes.
Okay. Well, that's important, like mechanically to make a game and then write, I assume, for it. So what about like weapons technology in this sci-fi? Do they have laser guns?
I guess you can teleport bombs with the same technology.
Yeah.
You could.
Yeah.
Certainly.
Well, you could do a lot of stuff with science, but I don't want to get into that because I will go on forever.
Okay, so what do we have? We've got lasers. We've got.
Step right up.
I'm trying to think. What was the big one they used in the book?
Do they have like shield generators for big spaceships?
Yes, there are shields.
Is
Something
there
to stop the teleporting missiles? I assume.
Yeah.
Of course.
Is there
Could be a real problem if you didn't have shields.
Are there space battles like naval, or are they more like fighter jets flying around?
Combination of both.
All right, so
I would say,
World War II.
I mean, I would really say, look at Star Wars, look at Babylon 5. You've got your big ships out there, and then you've got your fighters that are out there fighting it.
All right, that's good. That's like my preference as well. But it's good to have an idea, because you could actually make a pretty kick-ass like space battle thing that works more like ancient times, where it's mostly the big ships ramming each other because that's just the best weapon they have.
Mm-hmm.
Defensive technology has completely outstripped every kind of offense other than collision.
Yeah. And then boarding, which would be cool.
Well, that would give you an excuse to do everything, to have the party like influence the outcome of battles. I'll give you that.
You know what? Yes. Especially if it's I'm sorry, not to make all of our ideas related to other things, but making Iron-Blooded Orphans. Gundam Iron-Blooded Orphans.
Oh, yeah,
okay.
The anime, the show.
They had ship versus ship battle, but the thing that let them win is the unexpected boarding party.
Yeah, they like did a fake ram, and then everybody just jumped off onto the other ship or something like that. It was pretty ridiculous and awesome. That was a good show. Definitely one of the better ones. Gundam is also a very large and extensive franchise. Yeah, hopefully ours will be there too someday. Give it, 40 years?
Yeah, something like
37 is a good number, I think.
Okay, all right, good. We'll put that on the calendar.
Okay, so let's talk like the basic skeleton of the game here.
Like the mechanics?
No, story.
Story.
Yeah. So we've decided that, or rather suggested that the story will be about trying to get this technology working that will either allow you to move the rogue planet or destroy it, right?
Yes.
So typically, you have the protagonist, who is an audience surrogate and doesn't know anything about the story before it starts, get drawn into the story by another character. Do we want to deviate from that, or are you okay with having the protagonist, helps out the agent who is on a mission to track down the scientist who knows how to use this technology, or something?
I think that would work in this case. When I was originally looking at this as just a series of novels, the story would go from the characters from the first series going directly into the second series, so they'd be on hand for the battle that destroys the Retilic fleet, and then you see it's like, oh, we're getting weird readings from the star, what's going on here, and then they kind of go on from there. But since we're kind of going to dispense with the Retilic story as part of the video game and go straight to the Lamagos story, I kind of agree that you want somebody who's not in the center of the action in the first story to be your hero.
And then we can have the people from the first story, if you want, be characters that they meet and have to deal with.
Right.
Like, I'm going to assume that there was at least one character who would be, from the original story, who would be entirely too eager to fight, because that character appears most of the time. And because of their heroic actions, like, you need to talk them down in order to prevent war for long enough for your peaceful solution to work.
That could happen.
I don't know. I'm just always on the lookout for uses of the persuade skill,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So yeah, you run into this. The protagonist runs into the agent who is supposed to find the scientist. The agent either dies and passes on the mission to you, or joins your party but defers to you because they were a low-ranking person in their party and the only one who's still alive. You go through a few quests to meet the scientist. The scientist sends you on a few quests to get the technology. You do one final quest to make the thing happen and save the thing.
Or destroy it. Your choice.
Yeah. It sounds like a decent scaffolding for a story.
Yeah, it does.
All right, so what makes this unique in the sea of video games?
Our laser guns shoot backwards. Done.
It's just a competition. Who can kill themselves sooner.
It's going to be a very short game.
You have to convince other people to fight on your behalf. It's all about dueling. But yeah, no, surrealism is right. What are we doing here?
You know, honestly, as far as that goes, I don't think that, you know, we're kind of getting into this question of, is there such thing as an original idea?
No, we bypass that entirely. Our motto is rip off 5 things simultaneously.
Yeah. Oh, perfect then.
Also, my go-to is take the thing that never happens in a video game or a story or whatever, and then make it happen in your story. So
yeah, they already did that with Mass Effect, didn't they?
No,
I don't know. What was the thing you were talking about?
I'm just saying, if you're talking about what they never do, like, you know, endings being, you know, really horrible.
Okay, but people make bad games all the time.
That's not subversion. That's just the 90s again.
No, so let's think about either space operas or top-down RPGs. What is an option? What's an option you always notice, but like you just accept you don't have? I mean, other than jumping over small obstacles.
Yeah.
It's not much of a gimmick, although we could do that.
So, like, when you're playing a game like this, would you just kind of assume by rote that you can't do?
Yeah, or what wouldn't happen? Like,
Right. So one thing that popped in my mind was that you go down what looks to be the evil path, but then there's a big justification and a way you can do it that is good.
So if you actually dig into the lore enough, you find out that there is a good reason to destroy this planet.
Yeah. Or like if you got the power to destroy the planet, but then use that to convince everybody to just actually get up and leave.
Oh, so just use the threat as the ultimate persuade option?
Yeah, so you do the bad thing for good reasons, as opposed to doing the bad thing and then twirling your mustache and top hat.
Yeah, or alternatively, you can find out that. Sorry, what were the blue humans called again?
Lamagos.
Lamagos.
You can find out that the Lamagos on the colony planets really want a rebellion, but aren't strong enough to defeat the central government. So, like, you're helping the species by destroying the world.
Yeah, because when I played KOTOR, I wanted to like get into the enemy ranks and then like go in from the inside after like joining the Sith, and I was really sad that I couldn't do that. Of course, now I understand that would have been like thousands of hours of more development, but
yeah.
Now you do have to remember though that they're not really they're not aligned anymore.
Well,
it's pretty much every word for themselves at this point.
Okay.
What you would probably be doing if you were to eliminate the Lamagos homeworld, what you'd be doing is opening the door for the Exenerists, who are the religious wackos, and they'd be very happy with you for doing that.
Well, that's cool.
Okay, so
There's
it's like weird. Still the bad option.
No.
Well, it's bad in a different way.
It is bad in a different way,
which is nice. They always assume there's just one evil way to do things. So I think that's a little insulting.
So I do like the just using the threat option, actually. Just break the planetary government with the threat of annihilation.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
like you could go through all of the evil route and then pops out the dialogue option of transmit, leave your planet within the next 80 days or I will blow it up.
Yeah, because I remember with the ending for Mass Effect, and spoilers here, by the way, anybody listening or you guys.
Yeah.
One of the options is like, oh, take control of all the Reapers. So in my mind, I'm like, yeah, okay, I'll do that, and then pilot them all into a black hole. Problem solved. But like everyone else's interpretation is, no, that's the bad way to do it. It's like, no, all into a black hole. I got it.
That way you destroy all the Reapers without all the other bad things happening.
Yes.
Except for all the mass relays being destroyed.
That was dumb.
No matter what color ending you choose, all pudding in the universe is destroyed. I forget how that joke was supposed to go.
Right, I remember, but yeah. That's all that really needs to be said about that.
Okay, no matter what color pudding you choose, all spoons in the universe are destroyed. Right.
You can still eat pudding with a fork. Just saying.
It's just not the same.
It loses so much through the tines you see.
Okay, and then alternatively, along the good ending, you let's see, you tow them to a new star, and I don't know, then go on to. You have the option to throw stars at people and become the new galactic emperor with this technology.
Yes, it takes a while. They're still stars, but it's still kind of terrifying.
Yeah, I have a ship that can move planets. Do what I say.
Then you're the villain for the next game. Yay!
Yeah.
Hey, that's an idea.
So that's a good twist ending. But like, while you're playing it, what could make this different? What's a gameplay twist or a recurrent story twist that would make it stand out amongst all of the other games?
I mean, so far, as far as I know, nobody's done this type of game with space opera. And I know that's not exactly a story twist, but
yeah, okay.
It would have a certain novelty. I mean, we've got the Fallout games / Wasteland, which is post-apocalyptic, and it works really well for that. We've got D&D games, or pseudo D&D games like Pillars of Eternity. But like I said, I've never actually seen this style of game work with a space opera. So I think that in itself would make it stand out.
Okay. But for a gameplay twist, I don't know. Anytime I play a game and I start thinking to myself, wow, this is just like any number of other games I've played, I just get really annoyed. Like, why would you make a game that didn't have some element that, yeah,
so
it's very varied. So the story is a good start and is definitely a marketing point, but
I think that the one thing that you'd have to do, because this is space opera, is you would have to have a way to include the control of a spaceship in with the game, if that makes sense.
That is dangerous thinking. A lot of games have done that badly over the years.
Can you think of any examples off the top of your head?
Shadows of the Empire. Star Wars, Shadows of the Empire.
I never actually played that.
Yeah, can you give us a little refresher?
Okay, so it's most of the game is just you running around, third-person shooter. But then there are a few times where you get stuck in a spaceship, and you're just controlling a turret while the ship flies around.
That sounds bad.
Yeah, I mean it's not irredeemable or anything. But it's just.
Is that the orchestra telling us our time is up?
Yes. I'm afraid we only have infinity more minutes.
Oh, man, how are we going to get through everything?
Oh, slowly.
Okay, but yeah, the turret sequences are just like they crammed a really simplified, half-completed game into your game.
Well, so that was the Nintendo 64 game, right?
Yes.
Okay, I think I recall what you're talking about a little bit more. So I think if we came at it with forethought, because one, turret sections been done, but we could definitely make it so that instead of like in, again, Mass Effect and Knights of the Republic, where you just get your ship and your ship is just the MacGuffin that moves you from place to place, you could actually be buying a ship and moving around and then upgrade it. Black Flag other ships.
Well, I think that if you treat the ship as though it's its own character, and you could actually have this thing move like tactically and make it like turn-based. So
just an extension of the game where the ship is your character instead of the protagonist.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, actually, that kind of reminds me of what they did in Xenosaga, where switching into your giant robot is just a move you can use. And like, just there is a giant robot standing next to the other two people in your party who may or may not use their own giant robots for the fight.
All right. Well, kind of related. But yeah.
Well, related in that vehicle combat works exactly like regular combat. It's just like you swap out the character who got into the ship for the ship.
Right.
And then
I mean,
cool.
I think that the big thing is that you're going to have to keep in mind, you know, where a person can walk forward and backward and side to side, whatever. Ships, it's going to take a little bit of maneuverability to get where you want it to go. So, you know, your movement is going to be restricted in some way. But other than that, you know,
we can definitely do that in terms of making the game, having the ship combat be slightly different. And you could also have it be so that you have a small armada. So it's not just one ship, but maybe you have two, and your party members are split among those ships.
Yeah, or even
so that like this one is more maneuverable, so it has this guy and he's better engineer or something like that. And you can have more combat or
you
more
can have
skills
players
that apply
pilot
to other
fighters.
Yeah, something like that as well. That could be interesting. And we don't necessarily need to do it in 3D. There's a lot of 2D space games out there.
Yeah, a lot of people are willing to just accept that for some reason their space game is in 2 dimensions. It's
right.
just kind of a thing that people do to save time and effort.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If the game is good enough, it won't matter.
True. So that sounds like a very strong kind of angle to edge this out. That'd be really cool, because that's something I always wanted to do in Mass Effect, because the pilot of that ship, Joker, I wanted to play as him. I wanted to fly that ship around. That was awesome.
Yeah, no kidding, huh?
I want to be Seth Green that can't walk. That sounds cool.
All right. And actually, there's a problem a lot of games, especially RPGs, run into, where after the first leg of the game, you just have all the money and nothing to spend it on. So
we can make ships expensive.
Yeah, you can buy more ships. If you make a character who's really good at making money but really bad at fighting, then you just buy tons of ships.
Or upgrading a ship is expensive, or your crew. You've got to hire crew. Pillars of Eternity actually did a pretty good job addressing that, because you got all kinds of money, but then you had to sink ungodly amounts of money into your keep.
Yeah. Oh man, when I finally finished upgrading that, I was just like, okay, now what do I do with the millions of gold I'm making?
That's the point. I actually just hit that point in the game not too long ago.
Yeah, I actually
For
ended up
increasing
stopping
your
playing
armada
around then.
size,
You need
money
manpower.
could be one of the biggest factors. But I do think also decisions you've made at charisma related things should play a role, because if certain parts of your crew don't like you enough and they have their own ship, they could just mutiny. And then you become Jack Sparrow and you have to get off another goddamn planet.
So you have to buy the self-destruct or remote detonating self-destruct mechanism.
Yep.
Or pay them enough.
Which brings us back to the theme of thrashing people.
Either you come across as important enough to how they make money that they need you around so that they don't mutiny, or I don't know, they like you enough to not mutiny.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I just think that would be an interesting thing for the mechanic of adding ships to your armada.
Every time you kill a party that mutinied, the remainder of your crew's loyalty shoots way up.
All right. Well, hey,
especially when you give them all small raises afterwards.
Yeah. Go ahead. So yeah, that's just a huge money sink. It's just paying your crew more so they're more loyal.
Yeah.
Right.
Like, that is an option.
Double everyone's pay, but sir, that'll be exuberant. Yes, I know. I've got so much money. I'm just trying to find out how to get rid of it all. I can't trust the banks.
Well, I mean, I've hit the cap on how much money I can have, so I'm trying to burn it off. I've got 999999999.
Yeah.
I know that feel.
Here, just take some. I don't care. So, how would the game work mechanically?
How would it work mechanically?
Yes. Do you equip items? Do you have classes? RPG questions?
Yes, to both.
Classes,
Nice.
yes.
Standard. Do you have technology that acts as a stand-in for magic in most of these games?
There is mental, there's telepathy, that sort of thing. So, I wouldn't say it's a strong stand-in.
Well, I mean, you could do something like have plasma grenades. Like, instead of having to buy a new one every time, you can just give a character as a class feature. They can rig up 2 plasma grenades per mission. That's their stand-in for Fireball.
Mm-hmm. You could do something like that, yeah.
All right.
All right. Does that fit the setting, do you think?
Sure.
All right.
Absolutely.
So yeah, we'd have to come up with a decent amount of weird science tech to take the roles of certain spells that are fun to use.
All right. Just pull out the book of weird science tech.
Well, I mean, name a spell and I can probably come up with some half-baked science explanation of how people do it.
Yeah, totally. So we would have then different classes. So we would have obviously some sort of like fighter dude that just kicks shit in. Like
Soldier,
kind of the standby there.
Soldier, gadgeteer, and pilot.
Yeah, the pilot has a bunch of technical skills. Don't take them to a fight unless you really need to.
Unless you're really short on staff.
Yeah. Want him to have like also like great cooking skill, like just boosts morale. He's like the bard.
Yeah,
I like it.
That'd be great. So
maybe you could specialize in cooking lizard.
My God.
Oh yeah, that's another random thing I wanted to bring up. The reptilian race that destroyed the Empire. What were they called again?
Retilic.
The Retilic. Do we have a Retilic character?
Maybe, because I kind of see it as after their fleet is decimated, the ones that are still around, you know, some are going to flee known space. Others are going to have to find some way to become incorporated into this galactic society that hates them. You know, they kind of become the dregs of society. So I think that could be a possibility.
So I'm totally imagining you meeting this Retilic character at like a blood sport, just because that strikes me as like where the dregs of society would be forced to go.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or alternatively, you're recruiting people because you need manpower from a ghetto.
Yeah,
and it's just so we got a bunch of recruits. They're Retilic.
Huh.
I think they were still around.
So an interesting angle that would work for the ship thing. Assume that you have like demographic information on your crew, and I know it's getting a little bit complicated, but if we're going full old school RPG, I'm not too angry about that. But you have like readouts of like crew members and like what race they are, and then you could like need to kind of keep in mind racial tensions and hatreds and biases and stuff like that.
If you're constantly rating one race for money, then it makes members of that race unhappy.
Yeah, that would be kind of cool.
I like it.
I think that would be simple enough to handle as long as no, that would be fairly simple to handle as long as it was just a check of is their loyalty high enough to survive this conflict?
Oh yeah, it's definitely doable. It's just as a thing that the player needs to keep track of. Yeah. It might be too complicated on top of everything else. But
like if you station two races that hate each other next to each other, their loyalty suffers a steady drain, and every race hates the Retilic.
Yeah, and then these two races
really cheap.
Yeah, super cheap.
Yeah, so, the humans and the space elves love each other, or something.
Darren, how do you imagine, like, if you just visualize the game in your head and like you're doing you got the top-down thing? I know that.
Yep.
But so you start a combat. What's important? Like, how would that go?
Okay, so there's really two forms you're going to find in existing games. One is going to be turn-based. The other one is going to be where the characters kind of act autonomously, but you can hit spacebar to pause the game and then like give them new orders, like move over here,
Old Republic style,
switch guns, you know, whatever. Honestly, I'm not. I think both forms have their strengths and their weaknesses. And I couldn't tell you, honestly, which one would be more fun or which one would lend itself more toward a science fiction game. I can say that, you know, the Fallout games and the Wasteland games are turn-based, and, you know, that I kind of enjoy those. So, you know, I'd say we'd have to pick an option and go with one. You know, is it turn-based or is it interrupt-based?
Okay, so I would say the strength of the turn-based system is that it's a lot easier to control and utilize all of your characters' powers.
Yes.
So it feels like the player feels like they have more control. The pause button option, you can still control and optimize all of your characters, but it gets really tedious if you do that. So it's a lot more fun to play that game with a flying by the seat of your pants, controlling one player at a time or one character at a time. So the question is, when you want to decide which path to go, do you want the character to feel like a battle is chaotic, or do you want them to be really cold and calculating while deciding how it will go?
True. Like which one is kind of the mindset we would want a player to be in.
Yeah,
Right.
So think about battle in this setting. What feeling should it have associated with it?
Like a hectic or a mastermind, I guess. Kind of.
I always saw it as kind of hectic. I always saw it as being a bit Star Wars-ish.
Okay.
People have got their blasters out and they're running and, taking cover and whatever.
All right. Well, let's just roll with that idea then for a minute. So the combat, is this like the guys are all running around trying to get cover and get good angles on each other? If you make a bad decision, does somebody like die almost immediately, or do they have like a lot of hit points and a lot of staying power so that if they get caught out in the middle, they can usually get to like cover or a better position? Is terrain important?
I've always felt that staying power, it makes for a more fun RPG. If you've got to reload constantly because your character's getting killed, it's just not that fun, in my opinion.
Yeah, I'm with you. So, games where you have the opportunity to learn from your mistakes without starting over are just more fun most of the time.
Yeah, so when your mistakes don't penalize you to the point where you want to reload and retry everything.
Yeah.
All right. That's good. That's a huge, important thing.
Outside of so we have the tactical individual people fighting each other combat where you're probably controlling a party of 3 or 4. No permadeath there. And maybe in the ship battles, have permadeath for NPC mooks that, don't have names. It's just Retilik crew member 3.
I mean, excuse me. I would say that if you're controlling 3 ships and you've got characters on all 3 of them, and you lose one of those ships, then at that point you've got to make a decision. Are you gonna reload, or are you gonna just live without that character from now on?
Well, so we could even change a little bit of not a little bit, but a lot of the feel of the space battles, because assuming these ships can just FTL away whenever you think that you're going to lose, getting stuck in there isn't a huge thing. So we could make death actually that punishing if you decide to stay, if you're trying to push it.
Yeah,
and
because
someone
then
dies,
you deserve it.
Yeah, and then of course just make the ships move slower and like fire slower, and of course have a ton of HP so that it's painfully obvious you're losing, run away, or these people are going to die.
Mm-hmm.
I think that would be good, an interesting way to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I like it.
Yeah, me too.
All right, I'll just jot that down then.
Okay.
Kick-ass space battles.
All right, so cover bonuses. Do we actually care about them, or do we just gameplay story segregation that away? Like Knights of the Old Republic was the example I cited earlier, where you just have 2 groups standing in a hallway firing at each other, and
Yeah, the terrain didn't really.
Yeah.
Okay, so if it's interrupt based, I think the cover is going to be more difficult to use. Whereas if it's turn based, cover becomes very important and easier to utilize, I think. But I've never been crazy about the idea of 2 groups of guys just standing in a hallway, pew, 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 pew,
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it was more fun in KOTOR because of the strong melee aspect of the game. Because it was just the guys running up to each other and then wailing at each other with lightsabers. So, of course, it's inherently kick-ass looking.
And there's no lightsabers in this game, so...
All right, I'm out.
Okay. So how do we what twist do we put on this to make it feel like it's not just 2 idiots standing in the center of a hallway firing at each other? We could have
Actually, who here has played Dawn of War?
I have. I got approved for the beta for this weekend, actually. So once we're done here, I'm going to go play that. Check it out. I'll let you guys know how good it is.
Kick ass.
All right.
Okay, so in Dawn of War, it was an RTS. There was cover of a sort when you moved when you moved your people into an area that would count as cover. They just got a bonus to defense. Like, there was no animation for them even getting behind cover, or at least I never noticed one. So we could do the same thing here and just say that if there is an object between you and your enemy, then they have a reduced percentage chance of hitting you. So there's an incentive to go get in cover, even if you don't actually, like, it's not a cover shooter kind of thing.
All right. So the terrain would have an effect on that.
And have like an icon pop up above your character when they are in cover.
Yeah. And we could also make it so that things like the plasma grenades or other explosives can blow up cover. That was the thing in Dawn of War as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Unless the cover you're using is a crater.
Whoa. You've only made my cover more powerful.
You can't blow up a hole.
You can make that hole deeper, and then your cover counts for more.
Yeah.
No, you can blow up the hole. If the hole's a planet, just blow up the planet.
Then you're blowing up the whole different spelling.
Oh my god. Every time. All right, so that's pretty cool. And so it wouldn't actually be too difficult to get a demo of that running. Obviously, this would be like with blocks running around doing everything. Mm-hmm. But we could definitely do that. I'm busy right now, obviously, working on Blaster Girls, and actually it's Ludum Dare weekend right now. I'm working with some students on that, I think I said. But so this is your IP. Would you be willing to have us try to whip up something and maybe go get some funding together on Kickstarter? Would that be an option?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely.
And
yeah, I mean, I would very much like for Reign of Discordia to become sort of this multimedia thing. So you've got your tabletop gaming, and you've got your books, and then you've got your video games. And yes, I would love for it to turn into its own little empire. So yeah.
Well, and I'm sure we all would love for there just to be more good space opera games.
Yeah, absolutely.
Space stories that don't involve Jedi make me happy.
Yeah, and also one that actually has the fucking spaceships. Let's be honest here. That's probably like the coolest thing for me. I love spaceships. I haven't talked about Black Omen on the show, but that's like my personal gigantic spaceship battle simulator. That's not a space opera because it embraces the science first. So this is the more fun, whimsical, whatever's cool sort of thing. And then of course you got the so actually you could make really kick-ass boarding scenarios.
Yes.
With this, since we have both like the boots on the ground and the ships in the sky thing at the same time, that would be so cool. Holy crap.
Yeah, I figure that's probably how at least the final encounter would go. You need to go to the place, you need to get your ships to a place, and then you need to board the place.
Ooh, what if instead of
the thing happen?
So normally in RPGs, you do a lot of like, spelunking, going into caves, going into ruins. We could do that, but it's derelict ships in space. They're space hulks.
There's a lot of different things you could do in this setting. I mean, there's derelict ships. There's those 3 core planets that are completely depopulated.
Probably a lot of space stations that no one's bothering with anymore.
There's actually a fair number of space stations that are still in service.
Just grab an asteroid and hollow it out, man.
Yep. There's shipyards that are no longer in service, where there's stuff going on, or there could be. So yeah, I mean, there's, in terms of spelunking type activities, one of my goals when I was creating this setting was to make sure that there was no shortage of that.
Well, that sounds fun. Let's do it.
And just have one of your cash cows be going and performing illegal salvage operations on ships that were blown up or abandoned years ago.
So a really cool side quest would be to find an ancient battleship hulk and then just invest shit tons of money in like making it work again.
Or take the last option.
God damn it. Stop writing the cool stories already.
So you find a big ship at some point, maybe not ancient battleship hulk, but you find a ship and you can either invest in repairing it, or you can part it out for an immediate cash infusion.
Well, let me say this. This is getting back to the first series, which we wouldn't touch with the video game, but there during the war between the Imperium and the Reptilic, there was this class of starship called the Imperium class destroyer, I think it was, or battle cruiser. Much more massive than anything else they had in the fleet. Of course, there was a small number of those that were made, and they were very powerful. And as far as we knew, they all got destroyed in the war. And I've referenced Book 2 a couple of times, but it's the goal in that one for the characters to find one of these at a shipyard that's been abandoned, and basically bring it up to service so it can be used in the war effort. So that's been that idea has already been kind of done, but it could still, there's still, I think that by the time, the video game happens, that ship would still be around, probably. Or maybe it's gotten lost since then. Maybe it was right. Maybe you need to find it again. Who knows?
Space is big.
It has a really buggy nav computer. It gets lost a lot.
Well, I mean, it might have been attacked, and on some secret mission somewhere, and attacked, and everybody's dead, and it's listing somewhere, and you might be able to go and salvage it, resalvage it, and bring it back in.
That could be maybe that could be like the recurring character. Like how the C-3PO and R2-D2 are in every Star Wars movie. It's just this giant ship is always somewhere in all these Reign of Discordia games and stories.
So what you're saying
like that idea.
An Easter egg.
Hey.
All right, but what I was actually picturing though was like when you're going out and doing your spelunking operation, you neutralize all of the hostiles on this ship or whatever hazards are there, and just periodically you find abandoned ships and you get to decide whether you want to refit them to serve as part of your fleet or part them out.
So
yeah,
that would be cool if we do actually
counter, I guess.
Refit, scrap, or sell.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if we do embrace the mutiny mechanic, that would actually be, I think, important and good to have, is just being able to fix up old ships you find all the time, especially if they keep leaving all the time.
Have a good rotation of ships.
Yeah. Plus, then it makes it, because in games like this, I get really attached to big things like ships and stuff. So I'm like, oh, I don't want to leave it, or I'm going to try and have the starting ship be useful in the final battle, or something like that. But if we do this, then they're coming and going all the time, and they're not being destroyed, so I don't feel bad. It's just those bastards stole it, so now I have to hunt them down and destroy them.
Yeah, or if you have a high enough demolition skill, just push the self-destruct button.
Exactly. See? Demolitions. It's
You
like
lose the ship,
charisma.
but you save so much time. Well, the demolition skill is like what lets you throw fireballs. So
Exactly. Call the character class the Demolisher. What do you do? I mostly just set up explosives and leave.
just wait for someone to be near them, then push the button.
That's the guy from Atlantis.
Oh, yes.
The character state?
Vinny. Yeah.
The dynamite. Boom.
Nitroglycerin.
Why are you using nitroglycerin? You have way better explosives. Listen, you can't match Mother's nitroglycerin in space, okay? Let me tell you that right now. C4, just like your mother used to make. All right. Well, hey, that sounds pretty cool. That we should talk about this more, not on the show. I think it'd be great. But that was Easter Egg Productions. I'm Cale the Quick here with Darren, Caldwin, and Surrealism. And I don't think we are sounding bored. Catch you all next time in 2 weeks on Sounding Board episode 13. Have a great evening.